Hey everyone, Kevin and I just got back from Orlando, and we're back at let's go to our big fancy boardroom, uh, where we learned about the latest technologies to outfit boardrooms like this. Um, so Kevin, great to see you. And it was great to see you in person. We got to hang out. I think that was the best part of this whole thing was hanging out with all of our friends.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Enterprise Connect, has always been for me about the people. So it was, and in-person conversations, those kind of you can continue the conversation of, with people you bump into in the hallway or after the session. Those are fantastic.
By the way, I just jumped right into this, assuming everyone knows who Kevin and I are. But I'll put our stuff in the bio. We're both members of BC Strategies. That's probably an important thing to mention.
There you go. It is.
And let's start about talking about the show itself. This show has been at the Gaylord for 10 years. It's a very important show for our industry, and there is a lot of controversy because it's changed in recent years. I think the pandemic had an effect.
Yeah.
What do you think your thoughts about the show overall?
So I think it's been at the Gaylord for longer than 10 years because I think the way I count, I think I've been there for 15 years, but 2 years were discontinuous during COVID or one or two were virtual. Um, no, I think, after COVID, I think it is more difficult for end users to make the case that that their company should send them, pay for the conference pass, pay for the travel. Because I think a lot of companies are saying, hey, you were able to kind of keep up with the latest trends remotely, and, why don't you continue to do that? So, I think for 15 years or since I've participated, the vendors have always said there's not enough end user customers. They would always like more, of course, because they're coming and setting up booths and, would like to, I don't know, make some sales or at least identify some prospects. But for me, it's always been about the people. It's definitely an analyst show. There's other, there's financial investment, kind of analysts there. There's some venture capitalists. So, and you get to see all the vendors and hear all their messages kind of back to back to back. And I think we're going to talk about that. But that to me is one of the unique things that I really appreciate, as opposed to going to a show by a specific vendor where they're just spending a couple of days trying to brainwash you that their stuff is the best.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely differing opinions on the show. I think, for analysts, for press, and for the end users who do go, it's an amazing show. I mean, the content is amazing. The access to the vendors is amazing. When people say, is it a good show? They're really wondering what the vendors think because the vendors are the one who sponsor it. The vendors are the one who make it happen. And there's two points of view. Some vendors are saying it's an amazing analyst and press and partner, as you mentioned, show. And
Yeah.
the ROI is totally there. And the end users we get, the traffic's not what we'd like it to be, but they're high quality end users and we're happy. And there's other vendors who say the way we measure ROIs at this event is by sales. And there's not enough traffic at the booth and they're not showing up anymore, which is unfortunate.
Well, and I talked to some vendors and and I don't think this is the right thing, but they have to say like it's badge scans. It used to be the number of cards that were dropped into a fishbowl to win an iPad or an Xbox or something. They go back and that's how they justify the return on investment. I think so. I always think that's a bad thing because sometimes I get my badge scan because I'm interested in, I don't know, a little thing that they've got at the booth. And then they waste more time calling me afterwards. And I was not interested in, necessarily what the vendor was offering. It was just, I don't know, it's the stuffed animal that they had or what have you. So I think that the vendors, to your point, David, the vendors that say these are high quality leads, like it's quality over quantity, definitely the people that have the conversations with the vendors, I mean, they're very, very interested because in today's world, let's face it, you can go to a website and see lots of, you know, pre-recorded demos. You can learn all kinds of things. You can ask your AI assistant to compare and contrast various product offerings. But really, I think, the in-person, and this is where the vendors that excel, they show, live demos, they have real conversations, they start building a relationship because increasingly, for a lot of these platforms, whether it's a contact center, you're in the CX world or the employee experience world, you're forming a partnership. And so this starts to form the rapport in person. And then
Yeah,
you can, kind of extend it once you get back and do that kind of virtually.
that human connection. I
Absolutely.
will say one thing, as a sort of a side benefit of the less traffic at the booth, or just the approach of EC, it not just being all about the leads, all about the scans. Um, I feel like when I'm walking around the booths, I talk to them, I'm interested in their products, I'm learning about them. Oh, by the way, let me scan your badge. Where at other trade shows, I feel like a fish going down the stream and they're grabbing me. Hey, let me scan your badge. I mean, they're grabbing me and pulling me into the booth. I think they get paid by this. I think some of the people at the booth get paid by the scan, by the way they act. And I don't see that at AC, and it's nice because, oh my God, give me a break.
Yeah, no, I know. At other trade shows, you can't make eye contact,
Right?
right? You have to, because then once you make eye contact, then they're gonna suck you in, and yeah,
They're getting
whatever.
good at it. Some of them, they read my badge name and they act like they know me. Hey, David, good to see you. And I'm like, hey, how's it going? Because I don't recognize people. And I'm like, oh, I'm embarrassed. I'm like, oh, you don't know me. You're tricky. Oh, they're, anyway. So, let's get into the keynotes, because
Yeah,
we were saying the
absolutely.
strength of this show is the content, and the keynotes were right. Well,
The keynotes
let's hear
were
what you thought.
well. I think that there were, some keynotes were better than others. So just
I'm
starting
thinking about the
overall.
astronaut.
No, no, no. Mike Massimino
Yes,
was, I think that that was like an inspirational talk. I hope that there is more of this type of programming at Enterprise Connect 2026 in Vegas, right? Because that was phenomenal. Like he was
yeah,
a great presenter. He was humorous. It was, the engineering that he talked about, for the shuttle missions, the Hubble. It was inspiring. He tied it in well to leadership. I mean, he did a great job, right? So that was fantastic. I mean, that so he set the bar. If any
yeah.
of the vendor keynotes could rise to that level of the outer space, they that's where they should all shoot for. Not all the keynotes necessarily, they were of different calibers. Let me say that, and just an overall comment on the keynotes. I don't know if you saw this, but the vendors, they have been using their products, including kind of alpha versions, beta versions, for a really long time. So in several of the keynotes, because um, to do some of the sessions that I delivered, I went deep into in terms of what features are released and what are not released. Several of the keynotes talked about features where I believe the vendors forgot that the features that they're talking about are not generally available because they have probably been using it for a year, but the
Oh,
most people in the audience may not have known what they were talking about unless they were on some early release, right? So that's a general thing. Hey, vendors, double check before you put something in the keynote that it actually is released. If you're talking about it like it's released, right? It's one thing to show and tell things on the roadmap, but several were talking about things as if people should have
should already
experience
be
with
using
things, and
them.
they didn't. Yeah, exactly.
That's
Right.
funny.
So that was my overall. I don't know if you had any overall comments before we go into kind of some comments on each.
Well, one overall, and every analyst was saying this, so original, David. But there's a debate over canned demos and live demos,
Right.
and I understand going with the canned demo because this is God. They spent half the year preparing for this. It's such a big moment. If a cord doesn't work and something fries and the demo doesn't go, but you can't risk it. You just can't risk it. You can't risk it. But you can risk it. I'm sorry, you can't risk it. I don't care about. If I've never criticized a company. Well, I don't want to say that. Maybe I have in the past, but I would never now criticize a company for a failed demo. I'm okay with failed demos. That's real. That's real life. Have a big failed demo. That's fine. It'll make it a bigger story. And what I always say is, if you have a talking dog and you say our new product is we have a talking dog, and you stand there on stage and tell me about the talking dog for 15 minutes, I'm going to lose my mind. Bring the dog on stage and let him talk. And we had a lot of talking dogs. We have a lot of talking dogs every year, and I'm like, oh my God, I want to see the talking dog. I'm like, not only does he talk, let me tell you about how shiny his fur is. I'm like, no, stop telling me about the talking dog. Bring him out here. So I'm in favor of the live demos. I think it's worth the risk.
So I agree with you. I think I did a post on LinkedIn that said the same thing. And here's the thing: even if you're going to do, you can do like if you can even a little bit fake it, right? Like if you're worried about an internet connection and things like that, do like rehearse it and do a pre-recorded live demo, but be authentic about the delivery. So, there was a couple of people that created analogies and two keynotes, in fact, talked about running a theme park. I guess you're in Orlando and they're inspired by Disney and Universal and all the other theme parks. But it's like I think that that's too many steps removed, right? Like be authentic and say this is how AI can help, kind of this is how it helps me or whatever. And even if you had this pre-recorded demo or that was a fallback, right? Like you used it as a plan B if you had bad internet connectivity or what have you. Um, I think just be authentic, right? So, and I think to your point, David, if it fails, and there has been in past years, there have been failures. I think Twilio had a problem, and the recovery from that actually, to your point, gained them huge kudos and a lot of press because, they just were authentic about it, right?
Yeah.
So, anyway, so okay, let's dive into the individual kind of keynotes. Why don't you pick one
All
to
right,
to
do you have a
start?
list? I didn't make a list.
Yeah, yeah. Well, pick one that you know of, and then I've got a list that I think is complete. So
Okay, okay. So make sure I don't forget any. Well,
yeah,
alphabetical. Amazon. They're in the alphabet.
yeah.
That's a
Okay,
name.
so yeah. So what were your thoughts on the Amazon keynote?
I was surprised at the how far along Amazon is. Amazon Connect, right? That's what
That is
you
correct.
know.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought, some companies, oh, we're so big, we have developers, we'll just make something for ourselves. And I thought that's sort of, they don't want to pay anyone else, they just make it for themselves. But no, this is a competitive, top-notch product. AI.
Yeah, so I think it was Pasquale de Mayo. I don't know. I'll probably mispronounce his last name. But so here's what I liked about it. So first of all, I liked his theme. He created this time theme, seconds, minutes, days, years, and he kind of continued the theme throughout. So I like that as kind of a storytelling process, right? But yeah, to your point, like Amazon Connect. I mean, it had AI embedded everywhere. I thought it was fantastic, and I loved how simple the deployment was. Like, so this new version with AI infused everywhere, literally, if you're an Amazon Connect user, which it looked very, very impressive, at least if you're in the CX space, you should definitely give it a look. But you had one toggle to move from the current version of Amazon Connect. You're like, you move the toggle switch and that's the deployment process, right? So then you get all the kind of AI infused, all the typical stuff like agent assist and wrap up, but also AI workforce management and just
Sentiment
analytics,
analysis.
quality man, yeah, just a whole host. Like they did a good job of infusing AI across all of the different functionalities that you will need to use as a contact center agent or as a contact center supervisor. So I thought they did a great job.
Yeah, I was happy with it.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
It's
What's
good
the
to see
next?
Amazon in our space. I mean, they can make things happen. Look what happened
Well,
when
and
Microsoft got into our space.
yeah, well, and that's like Amazon Connect was first announced at Enterprise Connect whatever number of years ago, right? So yeah, since then yeah, it's very interesting and they did a good job.
All right, let's move on to Google. I recently switched from Office 365 to Google Workspace, and it kind of made sense to me because I was using Gmail as a front for David at Let's Do Video, and it was forwarding, and now it's
Right.
David at Let's Do Video native. A lot of other benefits, so I'm very excited about what they're doing. I'm using Gemini on my Google Docs, and I'm not thinking of any big takeaways though. I mean, it was the kind of stuff we expected: AI, blah blah blah,
Yeah.
agentic. Um, I feel like I forgot the big takeaway. Was there something that stuck with you from Google?
Nothing that specifically leapt out at me. I mean, to your point, I think Google Gemini, we talk about this on the AI Chefs, Google Gemini and Gemini Advanced and Gemini Research and their integration with Workspace, um, they've done a really good job. And I talked about this in the AI assistant session. Um, if you're not a Microsoft shop, I think like the Google Suite with their AI kind of infused across, as you said, Docs and Sheets and Meet and um, it's a strong offering, right? So I think that was the thing. They were just emphasizing that they've got this, and I think that was the key point that I took away.
And by the way, this maybe goes back to the to my thoughts on the show in general. It's okay that there's no big announcements. It used to
Right.
be everyone saved their big announcements for the show. We've gotten out of that habit. People announce when they want to announce, so they don't get lost in the flood of announcements. Everyone announcing at once. So if you go to the show and you're like, "Oh, I'm disappointed," there's no. That's not what it's about anymore. It's about what we talked about before. So it's okay that they didn't blow our minds with something new.
No, and I think the thing is it's also good to remind people, right? So like the one thing where I talked about vendors forget what features have been released, the people that are there, whether you're an analyst, you may not cover all of these vendors, or you're an end customer, you may, just because they announced it, a while ago, it doesn't mean that you know everything about it. So I think if you've got
Exactly.
strong features, and you're a vendor, I think it's totally fine to show off, kind of what you believe are your competitive differentiation factors in the keynote, right? So
So next, let's
I,
do the. Should we do the Cisco Microsoft keynote or the Microsoft Cisco keynote?
well, no, let's do, you start alphabetical order, then you went A to G, and I feel C
I am
is
all over
Cisco.
the place.
Let's just talk about the Cisco keynote.
Um,
So I'll start.
okay.
So they did a really good they had a really good use of video. So if you're going to use video, I think Cisco set the bar the highest. They were really well produced videos. They were humorous. um, I liked the video they showed the person ordering flowers for his grandmother. That was really well done. They had humorous videos like the overworked IT pro, IT admin, and even kind of they played a final kind of like walk-off video that had, Snoro was part of it, and they brought it into with the IT admin that they played at the beginning. So I thought that Cisco got the best use of humor. That award from me, that's a
Yeah.
new award I just made up. Best use of humor. And they did some really good live demos, very authentic. So that was my takeaway from the Cisco keynote.
And,
Snora does a really good job.
and as far as products announcements, just and particularly agentic in the contact center.
Yeah,
It seems to
mostly.
be.
Yeah, the WebEx Ask Me Anything piece is still, that's one of the things that is not GA. I got a chance to kind of play with it early just for our AI assistance session, but yeah, it was agentic. And I made this point, like the contact center vendors, the vendors that are strong in contact center, I think they're going to incubate their agent capability in the contact center. And that's what we saw from Cisco. And then they will likely, you know, refine it and then bring it over to kind of the EX knowledge worker side.
It's just such a perfect use case and such a great, like you said, incubator. That
Right.
it's going to get a lot of use yeah, it's a great place for a bot to learn.
Absolutely.
All right, so should we go on to now I'm completely lost. Microsoft?
Yeah, sure, sure. Let's go to the Microsoft keynote. I know you are referencing that Elia, kind of was the main person driving the Microsoft keynote. And one of the strongest thing was right at the end, he showed off the interpreter agent, which when you sign up for the $30 per user per month Copilot, the Microsoft 365 Copilot license, you get these agents, the facilitator and the interpreter agent. He brought in Snora from Cisco, as they've done back and forth in their keynotes for a whole number of years, ever since Cisco announced that the Cisco devices were going to be Microsoft Teams Room certified. So this interpreter agent, I thought this was really good. This was right at the end. And it allowed Snora to speak in German. And then, because Elia doesn't understand German, at least what he says he doesn't, then the interpreter agent in real time in Snora's voice converts what he said in German into English, kind of using it, makes it sound like Snora's saying it. So
That
pretty,
was the key thing. I'm used to interpreters. I'm speaking in German, and you hear a voice that sounds nothing like me talking in English, but it was Snore's voice.
yeah, that's a cool use of, that's a cool use of kind of AI just, you turn on this interpreter and it does a really good job. So
One
I thought
interesting
that that
thing
was
about
really
that,
good.
I don't remember one of the analysts we were talking with the the Microsoft people afterwards, and he was complaining about, he thought it was a little bit too much latency between when Snorri finished talking in German and the English came in, and they explained that the German and English languages are reversed. The part of the verb or whatever that comes at the very, very beginning of the English sentence
Mm.
is the very, very, very last thing at the German sentence. I don't speak German, so I don't know, but someone who spoke German validated, said it's basically true. So the AI has to wait until the German sentence is completely done before it can start. I'm like, okay, that's fair. And they said with other language variations, it's not as much latency. I just thought that was interesting. I like stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that is an interesting point. I didn't know that. I just thought that, there is going to be a little bit of latency. It's like 4 to 6 seconds. First of all, when it basically figures out your voice profile, so it can generate kind of the different voice sort of sounding like you. But overall, the Microsoft keynote had, I think, some also good live demos. So I appreciated that. Um, here's feedback to the Microsoft marketing people. I know you like alliteration, but Elia got up there and there's three pillars: secure, simple, smart. And I know they're picking S words and they wanted to go. Um, Microsoft did like the S simple. I would say, hey, marketing people, another S word that you could better use: sophisticated, because Microsoft's got lots of configuration options, right? I think
Simple is
Zoom.
not their strength.
No, simple is not their strength, but sophisticated is, meaning
That's
you've
fair.
got a whole bunch of different configuration options. And, that's great because every time an enterprise customer wants a particular feature, like they showed off, like having CAPTCHAs to keep bots out of meetings. And I know that that was an enterprise customer that requested that. And so now Microsoft said, hey, we'll give you this option. And they give you lots and lots of options, maybe too many options, but simple it is not, sophisticated it is. So that was my take on the Microsoft keynote.
With the Microsoft keynote, there was actually one thing that, but they should be listening to you on that, especially, yeah, don't pretend to be simple. Um, but I've been saying I've been liking the general themes, the general, but there's been a lot of specific announcements. There was one specific feature of many many features mentioned during the Microsoft keynote that really got me, and that was the facilitator being able to look in rooms and see what's going on and understand it. Because
Oh,
I
right.
use AI chefs, right? We use all these AI things all the time, and I love the fact that I can describe something to it and we could talk about it. I love the fact that, and it didn't used to be able to do this. I can upload an image to ChatGPT or Copilot, and I can say, "Can you see this image and explain?" I can see it, but it can't look at videos. It can't see through a webcam. And I love the idea of it being able to look through the camera and look in this room and say, hey, someone needs their coffee refilled, and send for coffee, or say, hey, David, you're leaning back too far in your chair. You're going to fall over, being able to actually see what's happening in
Right.
the room. And that's apparently what this facilitator could do. It was said it was complimenting someone. Someone came in with it and it said, Susie, that's a nice big water bottle. Good job keeping hydrated. They actually had to train it to calm down because it was starting to comment on people's appearance. One of the things I struggle with, I make a video and I put up to YouTube and I'm like, I got to write the description myself because I can't say, watch this video and write the description for me. But that's apparently coming. So the idea of AI that can look through my webcam. Some people might not like the idea, but I love the idea. Or my meeting room camera and see what's going on in the room and understand it. I think that's huge.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I mean, Cisco talks about it in the context of occupancy sensing and people in the room and whatever. But I mean, this example that was shared where it's commenting on people's dress code and suggesting, David, that you may need a haircut. I mean, that's when you're going to turn it off. So there you go. So okay, so that was the Microsoft keynote. Let's what do we miss? So RingCentral keynote. Let's move on to the RingCentral keynote. I don't know. I'll start. So they focused very strongly on what they call AIR. That's a nice acronym. It's the AI receptionist. I thought that was, they did a good job there. They had a pretty good, example of how that would work. And the other thing that stood out for me is they talked about how 50% of Ring CX customers are using the AI quality management. So a lot of vendors talked about this, but that was a I thought that that was a really kind of strong stat. And once again, if you're not in the contact center space, this is the idea that, it used to be you would kind of cherry pick and listen to some recordings from some agents, but now AI can listen to 100% of the recordings of all the agents. And why you want to do that is it can really more quickly surface issues. So if your contact center is being bombarded by some technical issue or some particular product kind of issue, you're going to really know about it more quickly because it's going to surface. And certainly, from an agent perspective, you kind of want 100% of your calls tracked, not, if it was cherry picked and it happened to be a bad call or you're having a bad day that day. This gives you a much fuller kind of view. So I thought that, that's great that 50% of the RingCX customers were using that AI quality management. I expect we're going to see that go up for not only RingCentral, but all the other vendors.
I like the AI receptionist. A few years ago, I would have said, "Oh no, we're not ready for that." But we're ready for it. I think the quality is there that'll do a great job. And I think in general, RingCentral it kind of feels like the same sort of keynote as Cisco. They're doing a lot with AI. Obviously, meeting summaries, you start developing the AI, and the logical place to put it is in the contact center. And since
Right.
like Cisco, they're not going for that workplace space. They're not making a docs. They're not making sheets. They're not making the stuff that Zoom and Google and Microsoft are playing with. The logical space for them to put this AI and to showcase it and like you said before, I like that incubate it is in contact center. So they're doing it,
Yeah.
and they're doing. It's not like, oh yeah, we have AI in contact center. They're doing cool stuff that makes people sit up in the keynotes and appreciate it. So I enjoy RingCentral and Cisco because we know we're going to see some cool contact center stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the last keynote, or at least the last on my list, was Zoom. We haven't really talked about the Zoom keynote, so I'll start us off there. I loved Smita had a quote. I like this quote. So the more human AI becomes, the more time we have to be human. She said that in her keynote, and I thought that that was I like that theme. I think, overall Zoom could have done more live demos and I don't know that their product, I know, we use it often and like Zoom Docs. I mean, you've done some great videos on and I think, they're doing a lot of good things with AI Companion in terms of, they get the S for simplicity. That's always been their thing and they've done a good job of bringing AI Companion 2.0 into their suite and I think doing it consistently. I'm not sure that the keynote did as good a job as possible in terms of showing that off. They did talk about that they have 69% active user growth. They didn't report any specific numbers, but that that's not surprising. I mean, that's a big number. That's great growth as those are active users. And I think that that was active users for AI Companion, which doesn't surprise me because they've done a good job of kind of integrating the AI and making it accessible. The one thing that I think that people, and I don't know that this was emphasized as strongly in the keynote, but people should take away is Zoom is doing a really good job of saying, hey, we will integrate if you use Exchange and Outlook for your calendar, or if you use Google Calendar, Google Docs, you can be in Zoom and the AI companion can integrate into those other data sources. So I think that view that says we may not have all of the information, but they're talking about using Glean and having more integrations. They're trying to say, hey, we want to make AI companion smarter by giving you these integration paths, even if you're not using Zoom for everything. I think that that's something that people that are Microsoft shops might want to take a look at because they do a good job with that integration. I know I use Outlook Exchange, but in Zoom, it has access to my calendar. So I don't think that that, once again, came through as strongly as it could have in the keynote.
But it's
Hey,
it's a power
Zoom,
feature.
yeah, and Zoom, do a little less story. They were one of the two vendors that were talking about a theme park and a little less kind of background story and a little more kind of live authentic demos would have, I think, resonated at least more strongly with me.
What I liked about it, and I think some of the others did this too, was everyone's talking agentic, and there's all this different definitions of it and examples of it, and the Zoom examples of agentic just are, when we talk about simplicity, they make sense and they're things we can relate to. We talk about using Zoom AI Companion the way it is now, and it's like I'm already expecting it to be agentic. I'm already, I'll be talking to it about plans for future AI chef show, and the AI agent or AI companion will say,
Yeah.
you should reach out to Kevin and plan schedule a show for next week. And I want to say, well, why don't you do it? What do you mean me do? What do you work for me? Why don't you do it? And it doesn't do that because it's not agentic, but that's coming. I want to be
Right.
able to say, I could say, hey, scan my chats and make a list of people that should meet next Wednesday. I don't want to use the same example, but you get the idea. Or I could say, give me an idea for a doc, and give me an idea for a
Right.
doc. Create the doc, write the doc, start the doc. It's those sort of things that right now AI competitors doing a wonderful job of telling me what to do. And throughout the day, there's constant reminders of, oh, it'd be nice if it would just go ahead and do this for me, and it's going to start doing it, and that's what agentic is all about. And I think they gave a lot of those kind of real examples in the keynote, and that worked for me.
It made me laugh because it's like you talk about how the AI assistant is working for you, but maybe what you didn't realize is you're actually working for it. Maybe
Right? That's what it
this
feels
is maybe the
sometimes.
subtle. This is why AI is going to take over. It's like all of a sudden you're going to say, "Wait a second, it's now giving me orders, right?" And so anyway, but no,
How
no,
often
but
does
I agree
ChatGPT say you should do this next?
with
It
you.
does all the time.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
So
So no, so
let's
I think that that was all the keynotes. If that's my list. Did I miss
yeah.
one? Or?
No, I think we're good. Let's go on to our sessions. You did a couple sessions. Let's give a few minutes on each.
Sure. Okay, so I did two sessions. The first one on Tuesday was with my colleague and good friend Brent Kelly from Omdia, and this is something
You
I
two are
look
great
forward.
together, by the way. The back and
Well,
forth
thank
works.
you. And we put a lot of effort into it because we're trying to talk about the AI assistants and how you can get the most out of them. So, we spend months, kind of kicking the tires and it's not so much like the pros and cons, but figuring out what the strengths are of each of the AI assistants, and then what are the general kind of things you need to know to get the most out of them in terms of, prompting, double checking the work, all of these kind of things. So we looked at, all of the AI assistants that we've mentioned, WebEx AI Assistant, Microsoft Copilot. We talked about the variety of different versions there. Zoom AI Companion, RingCentral's AI Assistant in the knowledge worker space, Google Gemini, and we looked at Slack AI as well. So, had a great time putting it together. We had like 3 hours worth of content that we tried to deliver in 45 minutes. I think we did a good job getting through it all.
It was good.
Brent did a good job of, we always think that it's, people need to understand a little bit about, how the car engine works. You need to know a car needs gas or you need to plug it in if it's electric and the differences between them. The same thing with AI. You need to understand a little bit about large language models and how they're trained versus the retrieval augmented generation, because people think they're training a model when they're not, and vice versa. You don't have to become a data scientist, but I think to get the most out of any AI assistant, you need to understand a little bit about how they work. And Brent always does a really good job of explaining that quickly. He did it really quickly this year. Uh, but in the slides, and a lot of people wanted the slides, so we're happy to send those out. There's even more depth, and hopefully that'll be valuable. So that was
Great.
Tuesday session, more broad based. On Wednesday morning, an absolutely packed room, which was fantastic for my session leveraging Teams and Copilot. So I talked about what's new with Teams, what's new that matters or should matter to you. How do you understand the licensing? Because once again, the licensing is not simple, it's sophisticated. You got a lot of choices of add-ins and add-ons, and some of them cost more and some of them cost less. So how do you figure out what makes sense and then monitor if you're getting value in your organization? And then, of course, with Copilot, lots of deep examples on what it really does well, how you can get more out of it with, some of the prompting things, David, that you and I talked about on the AI Chef Show. But this was very, very specific to Copilot. And I was thrilled by the feedback that I received from, the people that were there. They got value out of it, which of course, as a presenter, that's what you're hoping. And,
That was great. You
you
should
know,
record that and put it on YouTube because it's really
well,
helpful.
that's,
Shame
yeah.
on Microsoft that it's so needed, but it's needed.
Well, and I think, it's nice. I think as an independent person, you have a little bit of a different spin, right? So I can try to, say, hey, here's the good, the bad, and the ugly. There's lots of good, but there is some
Yeah.
ugly, and you want to avoid that. And, I mean, if you're a Microsoft person, you kind of can't emphasize that, right? So I think that, I try to be, tell it as it is, right? And all of these tools are evolving. Copilot has seen great evolution, but it's still got a ways to go. And if you attended the session or if you didn't and you would want a copy of the slides, please reach out to me because I put all the work into it, and I'm happy to share, right? So those were my sessions, David. I know, you were involved in some pretty interesting and informative sessions as well.
Yeah, actually, I need your help because I was on a panel and it was a great panel, and I really admire my other panelists. And the topic was future of work, and I mean, you could you know, I think you could kind of guess what we talked about. Although it was a really interesting conversation, and I basically said there's two justifications for RTO. One is productivity, which I'm not buying it. There's you could see things on either side, but the weight of the evidence seems to be we're as productive or more working at home. And the other is corporate culture, which I'm not buying. Treat your workers better than I believe it. But I was so worried about what I was going to say, and I wasn't paying enough attention to what my smart friends were saying. What do you remember any other highlights from the panel from what was said?
Yeah, I mean, um, I'd have to bring up my notes. I didn't. I thought you were going to talk about your session, but I think it was a good. I think it was a good discussion in terms of recognizing that, yeah, the initial ideas around, okay, you're more innovative in the office. It started productivity, then it went to innovation. Maybe you're more collaborative, but nobody knew how to measure. I think that a good point that came up was there's different reasons for why people want, people to come back to the office. And one of the reasons is, from a real estate perspective and also from the broader community, right? So there are some leaders that I think if they're authentic and they say, hey, all the restaurants that are around
Mm.
in the downtown core, this is not a bad reason to say, hey, it'd be nice if people came back to the office 3 days a week. And it's
Support the
not
local
for
pizza
increased
place.
productivity, right? It's because we're trying to help the community. We don't want our downtown core to be hollowed out, right? And I
Right.
think people would get
That's
behind
fair.
that. And the other thing that I think came up as well and doesn't get enough play is, depending on where you are in your career, a lot of, a lot of younger people starting out will actually choose to come into the office. So I think that choice is what seems to work the best. You don't mandate that people need to be there on certain days, but you allow the choice, and and then you allow the
Flexibility.
flexibility, and then the AI tools that help you understand, like, hey, I want to go into the office next week. When are the people that I interact with going to be there? Oh, that's Tuesday. And so then you go in Tuesday, because what you don't want to do is go into the office and be sitting in the office in a less optimal setup than perhaps your home office, and
Sitting
then be,
alone in a meeting room
yeah,
like this
yeah. So
while
the
everyone
AI
else
needs
is
to
at on
maybe,
Zoom with access to their tools.
yeah, exactly, right. I thought it was a good discussion because it didn't just rehash, and it kind of expanded the different reasons. And that's what I think, we're in a hybrid work mode, right? And flexibility and hybrid working, let's just enable that, and then let's people, choose, right? And hey, Eric, if you're watching on Enterprise Connect 2026 in Vegas, maybe more virtual sessions as well, for those end users who can't get their companies to pay for them to go in person. Let's record more sessions on
Yeah.
video. I know there's
I
a
wish the session was recorded because it really was good, and I was too excited to be there to be taking notes or whatever. And I feel like being on the panel I missed out, but it was amazing, and it wasn't recorded.
no, but maybe in Vegas there'll be more recording of the sessions,
Yeah,
at least audio recording, right? Because then you can get the transcript
we get
and
something.
you can, kind of summarize it with AI and get more
There,
value out of it,
there was a
right?
funny moment during the session, and we're running out of time, but just really quickly, and it was a little bit off topic, but Dave Michaels was talking about use of AI in the workplace, and you and I know we treat AI like that new paralegal. It's doing a lot of work for us, saving us hours of time. But before I sign anything, I'm checking it as my bar license on the thing. And some people are expecting the paralegal to do the work and go submit it to court and for it to be correct. You can't do that. We can't trust these things yet. I love them. They're saving us mountains of hours of time. But at the end of the day, it's still you. And a lot of people don't get that. And I think Dave Michaels was saying, you know, why am I using this thing if it's going to give me bad results? It's going to take 10 years till it gets there. And literally jumped out of his chair, started waving his head, and everyone's like, "Kevin, you're not on the panel. It's not Q&A
I
time. Sit down."
know.
They're like, but I have to say something. And I was reading your mind. It's like, you're not doing it right. And it's not going to take 10 years. It is learning fast. It is better than it was last week. But it
Right.
was a funny moment.
Yeah, well, I think Dave said that hallucinations haven't gotten better. And I just was like, no. And Lisa tried to say that's not a question, it's a comment. But the thing is these are getting better, right? They're not perfect. The humans aren't perfect. And, I think somebody made a great comment, which was, you should treat your AI assistant like you treat a new assistant in
Yes.
your organization, which is
Yes.
to explain things to them and to double check their work, because you wouldn't bring, an intern in or a new assistant and
No.
day one say, yeah, okay, you write this email or whatever, write this report, and I'm
You
not
say,
gonna,
write me a draft that I'm going to look at very carefully.
exactly.
And
And
as
they
time
they
goes
would
on,
learn
you could
from
trust it
you.
more and more. But that first one, no.
Right. So I thought that whoever said that, I can't remember from my notes, that was a really good suggestion. Maybe even you made it, David, because I know you're really good at kind of treating your AI assistant like an
Like a
assistant, and I think
person.
that that's how you extract the most value out of it. So, but hey, hopefully, if you're watching this, hopefully you've extracted value
Yes.
out of this particular video.
Thanks for watching, everyone. And it was and thank you, Eric, and the entire team at EC for throwing another great event. I appreciate being on the panel. I appreciate everything. It is it's one of the big ones of the year for me, and I love this event.